Good afternoon again, everybody. This session here, which you've chosen obviously, is to do with the EMU Project presentation. Russell Smith, Estates Manager at the University of Bradford, and Hilary Pape, Ecoversity Academic Pioneer and Physiotherapy Lecturer, are going to be delivering this one. As we said earlier, you've got your voting forms to fill in for the Tom Bradley Award, so if you could please do that and then hand them to me or leave them on the stage at the end, that would be appreciated. And also, if you could hang on at the end, because hopefully Paul Richards will be back to draw the raffle for the winner of the iPad. Okay, thanks very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Russell, this is Hilary. We're going to talk to you about the EMU Project. But I want to start with a couple of thank yous. Firstly, thank you for a lady called Bev Goodard, who was our housekeeper where we're staying. In a typical engineer's fashion, I left all my shirts at home, so she very kindly got her husband's shirts, and I'm going to wear her husband's shirts, so I won't look an absolute scruff tonight, but thanks for that. Secondly, thanks to the AUE for inviting us here. It's a privilege to speak in front of my association. We're going to run you through our EMU project. This basically is how we use technology and behaviour change. It certainly changed my view on behaviour change. 5 years ago, if I talk about behaviour change, I would have laughed you out the room. But I really do believe it's got its place. It has its place. It's not the be-all and end-all. And this is how it's tales of love and disaster, really, how a physiotherapist and an engineer work together. And hopefully you'll draw some inspiration from it, and you can... over to Hilary.
Can I just... that's on, isn't it? Yeah. Just a bit by way of introduction then, my name is Hilary Pape and I am a physiotherapist by profession and I teach at the University of Bradford. So we thought we'd give you a bit of insight into how a physiotherapist came to be working with the Estates Department and Engineering. Some of you may be aware of the Green Impact Scheme run by the National Union of Students, which is designed at encouraging universities to adopt more sustainable behaviours. Well, Bradford University subscribed to that scheme, and I decided to take it up on behalf of the whole of the School of Health, because we were a discrete building, a discrete campus off from main campus. And part of filling in the Green Impact workbook involved me having to ring up estates quite a lot and ask questions that the workbook was asking you to find out. So I came under the radar of Russell and his team. And because of other things which we're going to talk about later, they sort of recruited me from that process. So that's how we came to be working together. But it's been quite a good relationship. It's become quite symbiotic, I think. But hopefully that'll come through as we move along the presentation. So what this next slide shows is, it's just to introduce you to Ecoversity, which was a phrase coined by Clive, our Director of Estates, as the university's strategy for incorporating sustainable behaviours into the university. So it includes embedding sustainable development across everything that we do, and it created change across the whole university, from non-academic to academic, estates, all the departments. And it includes how we build and operate the estate, but it also involved in incorporating education for sustainable development into the curriculum, engaging with our local community, and addressing social responsibilities, and engendering and fostering feelings of well-being. So it encompassed quite a lot of things, as well as sustainable building. So it's informed much of what we do, of our work, but also our successes. So as part of that process and part of the Green Impact, I volunteered to be what's called an academic pioneer. We had a very good Pro-Vice-Chancellor at the time, Jeff Layer, who's since left, who asked that all the schools, the academic schools, put forward somebody to be an academic pioneer to take education for sustainable development, I'll call it ESD from now on because it's quite a mouthful, into the curriculum, but also to encourage other sustainable behaviours. And it also gave Russell and the estates team the impetus to stretch the boundaries in terms of sustainability. And it got us all working together, which, as I've said, has been really good. So over to Russell.
This is the estate back in about 1963-64. Tom Courtney would have been running around filming Billy Liar and Bradford around that time. I don't need to tell you what an estate built in the 1960s is like. You know, it's pretty awful. So in 2005, along with the Ecoversity initiative that Hilary's talked about, we decided to regenerate the estate in a sustainable manner. And that takes a bit of determination, but there's also lots of linkages which I'm going to run through now. That is the same site, different angle, me perched up on the wall, nearly falling off it. That's our new Sustainable Enterprise Centre, 4.5 stories of hemp and timber frame. We wanted the summer of 1976, we've got the wettest summer in living memory, so it's been quite a stressful time, but you know, that's really the end game. I apologise for this slide, I can't even read it on there. That's our BREEAM record. I'm going to turn this way, I'm afraid. I'm going to talk about two buildings. This one here, this is our first stable in M Lane, and the one down here, the School of Health. Now it says pending there, it isn't pending, it got very good in the end, but it is 2/3 refurbishment. There it is. It's on the end of a grade 2 listed building. It has a bit of eco-bling, it's got some solar PVs, it's got a biomass boiler, but fundamentally it uses building physics, you know, heavy thermal mass, thermodeck system, and naturally ventilated. But it didn't really work. Well, it did work, but it didn't work as well as we expected. We put a lot of effort into the BREEAM into BREEAM, but BREEAM's got holes that need plugging. You know, the design teams don't always understand it. They get away with as little as they can get away with, and you know, I felt I let the school down. It was hurried and rushed, but finally, that's the key. That's the bit that twigged with me. Now, we built a green building. The building is green, but the people weren't green. We just shoehorned them in. And, you know, they didn't know what thermal mass, what they're supposed to do with natural ventilation. So on our next big project, which was a School of Health, the School of Health was originally off campus. It's got 3 phases to it. It's part Victorian, part 1960s, part 1990s. And to work in there, those pictures look bad, it was every bit as bad as those pictures suggest. And it had all these ills as well. I kept up there seeing the dean, and you know, it was drafty, cold, overheated, lifts don't work, and we were ploughing lots and lots of money into it, and it was barely fit for purpose. So it was starting off from a very, very bad position. This is the answer. This is the EMU project. I've got some abiding memories of the EMU project. I've got 4, I think. One is queuing up in Sainsbury's, thinking how we solved the problem and coming up with it. The second was going Clive, my director, trying to sell a balmy idea, which he said, Russell, get on with it. And I think it's taken me and Hilary all down the country of late, so it's quite a memorable project. And Hilary's going to tell you a bit about the project itself.
Thanks. So EMU stands for Environmental Move for You. And as I say, Russell came up with that idea in Sainsbury's. And it's basically an environmental behaviour change project. So what we're going to do is tell you a bit about what EMU Project did and what the outcomes were. So just to recap, as Russell has said, what the estates team had found is that the green buildings don't always perform as well as they should do, and that they recognise this is in part due to poor user engagement. I got Russell at the start of the project and his team to take me around the M Lane School of Management project and show me some of the problems. And I think things like staff were putting cupboards in front of sensors and stuff like this, so the sensors couldn't read the environment properly and this kind of thing. And the use of the radiator valves, you know, whacking them up. We've had these conversations amongst a few of us while we've been here. So what they wanted to do was to try and encourage more sustainable behaviour in our old building before we moved to our new building, and hopefully see if we got some carryover. So I put together a team, and we based it partly on the National Union of Students Green Impact Awards. So I built up a team, and we basically put in lots of interventions to try and encourage more sustainable behaviour. Not just about energy, because that doesn't float everybody's boat. So there was bits about recycling, there was bits about switching off, getting rid of fan heaters, so we had a fan heater amnesty. Toaster amnesties, all those kind of things. We ran poster competitions. I used to send emails out. We had a very good team at Estates that used to draft me things, information about how, what do they call them, TRVs, I was getting mixed up. TRVs, how they work, and we used to forward that out to staff to encourage the proper use. The Green Impact team went around the building physically switching things off and encouraging other people to switch off, and it got quite effective in that I'd be walking down a corridor and I'd see people leaping back into their office to turn their lights off. So it became quite dictatorial in places. It was really good. And we worked with the team that were helping the building move, so the staff and students move from the old building to the new building, and did loads and loads of recycling of office furniture, acetates, sending them to schools, to use in art classes, all sorts of things. So everybody got involved somehow. Even if people were keen on the switching off and energy saving, they were getting involved somehow. But what I think was one of the biggest interventions that we did was to engage the security teams and the cleaning teams. Now, when I first started on this project, I went into work very early one morning, about 6 o'clock, and thought, well, why are all these lights on? It was lit up like Blackpool illuminations. So I spoke to security, who said that they had this operational procedure that involved going around the building from about 5:30, 6, turning all the corridor lights on so it looked nice and welcoming for staff arriving. So I said, right, we're sacking that. Nothing to do with security. So we rewrote the operational procedure, and we only turned lights on left lights on that had to be for security reasons, so that staff could, when they came to work at say 8 o'clock, 8:30, they could turn their own lights on. And I'm sure that had a big impact, you know, from things being left on for an hour and a half, 2 hours that didn't need to be. Now, in the old Unity building, the cleaners cleaned on an evening. So I engaged the cleaners and got them to turn things off. So they used to go in and clean the toilets and then leave the lights on. So I encouraged them to turn things off. So whenever they went in the classroom to clean it, to turn it off. But also, very key, I got them to start dobbing people in. Who's left their computer on, who's left their lights on.
Including the Dean.
Including the Dean, and one of them even put a sticky post-it note on the Dean's computer saying, you left this on last night. But luckily we had a very interactive Dean, and she took it in good part. And she used to, you know, because I used to get her to send emails out on my behalf, because after a while people stopped reading emails from me. So I got the Dean to then send them out, because she was a very important person and people had to read what she sent. So all these little strategies, and it seemed to work quite successfully. However, I didn't know if I was making a difference. So, over to Russell.
Well, what Hilary always said to me when we ran the first Green Impact, what differences I made, and we couldn't really tell them. We could tell them generally that energy had gone down or recycling had gone up. But, you know, there was a missing link there, you know, that they couldn't, you know, what people need is to know how well they've done or how badly they've done as it works. And the missing link in our case was this eddy metering system. I don't know if John's out there from Sunderland, I can't see if he is because the lights are in my eyes. But I went to an AUE meeting in Sunderland and they demonstrated, and everyone was, oh, we can see how the light is more efficient, how fans are more efficient. And I thought, no, it's behaviour change. It's not very user-friendly in this form, but it's live data. You put it onto each circuit, you can see lights go off, you can see charges left on. So what we did is we trained the Green Impact team to use it. It's web-based, just needs a login and password. And after their interactions or interventions, they could see straight away if it made a difference. You know, and it's an arbitrary screenshot that I can't even recall where it is from the School of Health. That's a profile of School of Health while we were running it, and that you could see. It brings lots of information back. The risk is it brings too much information back at times. That's an interesting slide because we could, even though it's a relatively low load, you know, something was chunting away on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, and we eventually traced it down to a faulty fridge in sunlight in a conservatory. But you know, if you add up all these losses and switch them off or put them on time switches, it all starts to make a difference. Did it work? Does no one know where this comes from? If anyone's seen us speak before, hopefully you haven't said anything, but it appears on the Carbon Trust site, I believe. Because if you invest in behaviour change, well, you're going to invest in it for 10%? Well, the reality is you're not. No, okay. It's a widely used figure. It took me ages to find out where it came from. It was a piece of research done in Manchester, I believe, and the person who did the research, well, was slightly disowned it anyway, because I can't recall the reasons why they disowned it, but they did. This is what you can say. That's what we saved the School of Health. It wasn't even our primary target. Our primary target was to move the School of Health in a sustainable manner. So we have a crappy old building, and we saved that. You know, that's pretty impressive. And these are the end of report, so end of the turnout report figures we got. There's 4,000 metre reads there, so it's rock solid, it's normalised. The School of Health has a teaching pattern which teaches all year round, so there was no tail off. In fact, there was a new intake of nurses in about March when we ran it. So as you can see, there's a pretty impressive saving, 34% there, and on the next one we're up to 43%. So it absolutely did work, and it's empowering the people to do things and making sure they can see that difference and what difference they are making.
Tell them about NPower.
Yeah, while we were running it, NPower kept ringing our finance manager saying, oh, your gas meter's faulty, your gas meter's faulty. I'm saying, it's not. And the reason it was, the usage had dropped that much, they thought the meter was faulty. It's because we were operating a behaviour change programme. University did a turnout report, said, yes, we'll get on it, we want to go campus-wide on this. So we thought how we can do it. It was called Big EMU for ages, and our director still calls it Big EMU. I'll do a reveal later. I'll tell you what we did eventually call it. This is our profile. We've not long stored large-scale CHP, and we thought we can get between 12 and 17% saving on a behaviour change programme across campus, because they're energy skews. There's certain buildings you might be massive savings in, but on a campus-wide basis they're not really going to show. But if you get into the energy intensive buildings, you're going to save more. The important bit, it pushes us here. This bit here, that's export electricity. This is a weekend, which is even better. So not only are we saving, we're actually generating revenue through exporting electricity. So there are compelling reasons to go forward it for the University of Bradford. Now this slide, and I apologise for it because you can't read it, but it's got AUE connections. At last year's conference, I remember sitting outside on the bench in Edinburgh, sketches on a ballpoint pen, and then I photographed it on my iPhone and sent it through the smart young things in the office, and they turned it into this, because I was determined on the behaviour change programme not to see Russell just messing around behaviour change. I wanted to do it in a project-based manner. So we had a proper project board with teams, with overview and scrutiny, and the bit Hilary did was here. She was running between all the green impact teams. We didn't quite get as many green impact teams as we'd hoped for, but we got enough. And here's all the interested parties. Here's the project board. We didn't have a project board in the end. That just ended up being me. It was delegated down to me to deliver. So it was all done in a structured manner. This is the end game. This is effectively what our aspirations of our carbon management plan is, and it's to become self-sustaining around 2020, where surplus outstrips expenditure, and behaviour change is a part of that. It's now a binder to our carbon management plan. It's not all about behaviour change. There's lots of strands and elements that go to it, but it's part of it, and that's our end game. And this is what we called it. We called it Green Impact Energy. We worked with the National Union students. We had a bolt-on workbook, and we rolled it out. And the bit I learned about Edinburgh as well was how useless we were at using information on plasma screens. We really are. So we got access to the university's plasma screens. We started putting energy information on the screens. We started putting recycling information. We got a green strand. We got it branded. There's the brand, the bee buzzing around. We got students to make films, and it really was quite an experience. And it's very much a work in progress, because behaviour change, you've just got to keep changing the angle of attack all the time, because people get bored with it. Once you get bored, they stop. It drops off. So we're into about phase 3 now. I'm going to run you through phase 2 now, or Hilary is. I can't remember how we're doing it.
Do you want to mention YTD?
Oh yes, our year to date, we're just finishing our turnout report for energy. We're 28% reduction on 2005. So we're hoping to hit our 2020 target the next 18 to 24 months of 50%, and there's every reason to believe we will do. So Hilary's going to talk you through phase 2.
So based on what we did at the Unity, the old School of Health, as Russell said, we used the Green Impact scheme as a framework, and tried to engage more teams. So the School of Health team was an example of a team. Most of the other teams were just office based. So what we thought was we'll try and encourage more teams, and in that we encouraged some particularly high energy users. So our unique, that's its name, sports centre, and the catering side of things, plus some others. Now, Unique Sports Centre is a typical gym sports centre. It belongs to the university, so it's a private business in its own right, but it doesn't pay for its own electricity yet, does it?
Not yet, no.
And we're just wondering if we'd been more successful if it did. But we got a key person in there, Andy, one of the fitness instructors. We brought him to estates and sat him in front of the building management system and showed him how his building worked, how temperature was regulated, and got him to interact with us. And he came up with some fantastic ideas. Just things like, you know, they used to turn all the machines on, and they left them all on standby because it took so long for them to warm up and the data, because they're all electronic and whatnot. So he looked at that and whether it actually did take longer, and started switching them all off and not leaving them on standby. He looked at not turning all the running machines on when it was quiet on a morning, but only so many of them, and then as the clientele built up, switch more on. He looked at the air conditioning in certain rooms, and one of the big things we looked at was the swimming pool. They have a pool cover which saves how much?
Oh, it pays for itself in a year or so.
In terms of stopping evaporation and heat loss. But they'd not been using it, and we found out why, because it was too hard to get on and off too onerous to get on and off the swimming pool, and I think it had broken. So we're now working with them to look at replacing that and encouraging them to use it. So all sorts of interventions, and according to Russell's figures, we've saved about 15% already. So the next big thing was catering. And that involved me working with the caterers and the chefs in the kitchens, using the eddy metering, and the eddy metering people used to send reports through saying there's something going on and off in this bit, and I'd run along on a Friday when it's my estates day and find out from all the caterers what's this, what's running on here, what oven's switched on, what do you switch off, what do you leave on, who turns the lights off. So we could answer the questions posed by the eddy metering, and then we'd change things. And I had to go into the main kitchens, and I was on phone to estates. Mark Wrigley, our energy chap, was sat on the building management system, and I had the chefs turning things on and off, because we found out we'd altered the gas and vent system. When you use the cookers in kitchens, it has to bring on automatically the venting system. And they were turning it on too early before they'd even started cooking. And we said, well, we've altered it. And what we found out was it all been wired up wrong. So little things like that. So I'm sat in the kitchen talking to the chefs who, right, turn that on. Mark would say, yes, I've seen that, and all these kind of things. So I think one of the key things, if you're doing behaviour change, is to get your estates and your users working together. And now, everybody in my building comes to me if there's a problem with the windows or the lights or the heating. So I've become sort of this conduit, which is, I'm a victim of my own success, I would say. The next big thing is we've now engaged the cleaners. We've got a big cleaners competition. What do you call it?
It's called the carbon detectors. What we did is we formed all the cleaners. We cleaned them all at Bradford into 3 big teams. We did like an apprentice thing, got them to choose a name, gave them a prize. I can't remember what they called themselves. Team Dynamo was one, the Glowworms was another one.
Energy Warriors.
And the Energy Warriors was the other one. And then what we do every month, we have an awards ceremony in our student, like a stage like this, in our student building, and we give prizes out, and we G them up. And as an engineer, it's the most inspirational thing I've done, because these are probably people that aren't paid very much money, and the amount of information they are feeding us back is absolutely phenomenal. We can't deal with it, but I say keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming, because we will get around to dealing with it. And when we finish speaking, we get, Clive, our director, comes and give a speak, and then I speak and just tell them how they've done them, and Hilary hands the prizes out. And when we come off stage, they're queuing to speak to us, tell us about all the bad behaviour going out there, and just doing that, if we act on that alone, we think we can save another 5%. So really, that their eyes and their ears, and what phase 3 will be, which I'm writing the business plan now for phase 3, is we're going to run the carbon detective programme in parallel with, we're going to revert more to the EMU principles. We're getting teams dedicated, focused on energy. Don't run it with Green Impact, because Green Impact's run its course at Bradford, simply because I think the newness has gone. And as I said before, you need to change that angle of attack all the time. And what we'll do, we'll give them intervention plans, and we'll get them sitting in front of the eddy metering. We're going to put another £40,000 worth of eddy metering in. We think in the first year alone we can probably save about £100,000, if not a bit more. So it does have a payback. Obviously that's while we're doing it. So the intention is to start that after Christmas, give it a break, start it after Christmas. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going, having new ideas. And so from a small idea in trying to get people green, moving into a new sustainable building, we're actually getting energy saving. We do actually use the model we developed at the School of Health. We're refurbishing our library at the moment, and I've left it well known. I've let the librarians get on with it. They've got a project called GLEE. I can't even know what it stands for now. And it's the same thing there. We're turning a 1970s library. It's like life on Mars there. Before we refurbish it, we're going to make it naturally ventilated, strip out all the old pneumatic system, get rid of all the complication, keep it simple, and we'll save some money. But people working in that environment have got to understand their new environment. So it's spun out both ways. It's spun out with this, and it's spun out with the GLEE project, which is probably a presentation in its own right. So really, please switch on, please.
I just wanted to mention my next intervention is going to be trying to engage security, because the cleaners on main campus do everything on a morning. I went round with Henry, what's Henry?
Electrician.
But he's high up electrician, boss electrician, isn't he? About midnight one night, round one of our buildings with security, who then, once you're there, tell you all sorts of things they've spotted. They don't ever think to contact estates and tell us that lights weren't turning off and all this kind of thing. But Henry found it absolutely overwhelming, the stuff he found. And one of the big things he found was there was far too much emergency lighting. You didn't even need to turn the lights on in some rooms because there was so much emergency lighting. It was like Ellen Road, that's Leeds, if you don't know, Leeds United. So he's now putting measures in place just from having a walkabout. So our next project is to get security, which is going to be very challenging because they're a law unto themselves, to start thinking about things and reporting things like the cleaners do. So that's the next phase of this bit.
And that's what it's all about. That's our School of Health building. The building next is now being clad as well. So that's not a render, that's actually photographed. I think it was taken for Greenville magazine. There's no eco-bling in that. There's not one renewable on that. It's performing. We're going to close out the EMU project in the next few weeks. We're going to have a user group, focus user group, which in turn is going to feed into the seasonal commissioning. So, you know, there's all these things you can do. You know, how many times do you hear, I've got a green building but it doesn't work? Well, I think you've got to look at yourself somehow and say, well, is it the building or is it the people? Have I done my bit to tell them how it's worked? If you start telling people, I mean, that building's not perfect. I mean, it's naturally ventilated. As Hilary say, when the windows open and shut, it's terrible. But everyone wants to be in that building. There's a few gripes, but there's not one person I've been on. I tour the campus quite regularly now, and I tour that building. Not one person has come up to me and said, I don't want to be in there. And it's inside, it's every bit as spectacular as it looks. If you want to read about the EMU project, it's on our website. It can be downloaded from there. It's freely available. It's not the greatest of reading, but I mean, you know, it tells you it can be done. So really, just some questions now, really. Let's see. Lights. Is that good?
Hilary, how much time are you spending for your normal day job?
Did you all hear that? He wants to know how much time I'm spending for my normal day job. I get a day a week to do this, but I think I'm being quite good at sticking to that. It's not been bad over the last couple of months because the students haven't been there. And because we've got a lot of, once you get the measures in place, the teams run themselves, and it's just a case of me going along and chivying and making sure they're feeding back. Sometimes I have to do things on other days, but I've been quite fairly strict And I think a day a week's okay. The main problem has been that if you stick to one day, and I had to have a Friday because there's no teaching for me on a Friday, unless it's post-grad. A lot of other people don't work on a Friday. If they're going to be seconded out or if they only want to work 4 days, they often don't work on a Friday, and that's been a problem in getting to people. So sometimes I have to borrow some time and go see somebody else on a Monday or a Tuesday. But a day a week, yeah.
Yeah, we actually paid for Hilary's time as well. We bought our time out, so that all that time was factored into the business model. So I mean, it was all done on a business basis, so it wasn't just thrown together. So.
Russell, a lot of the stuff that you're doing there is sort of consistent with soft landing sort of methodology, immediate post-occupation surveys, monitoring the energy use, making sure the users are familiar with the buildings. Have you considered sort of adopting that more formal framework, or are you just? I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone caught that question. I think to paraphrase it, it's have I considered soft landings instead of this approach? Is that correct? Yeah. Well, as well.
That as part of a sort of wider soft landing approach, which involves sort of more interaction at the design stage on refurbs, or?
We do actually. Well, our framework's it's coming back from tender on Monday. Our consultants' framework, and we're actually putting that in, not verbatim. We're saying that all the consultants have to get involved with user engagement projects, whatever they might be. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really got my head around soft landings, and this I think is it's more discreet. I think it's more manageable. I think a lot of the work we have going forward, I don't think soft landings will be appropriate for it, but we can use the model we've set up here. You know, we can't expand it, contract it, or just adapt it to suit, I think. But yes, I was aware that there will be similarities between this and soft landings, yes.
Hilary, when you were pulling your teams together, how did you identify who should be in your team?
Good question. So the question is about how did I identify who should be in my teams. I was looking at key people. So, for instance, getting security involved. There was when we were at the old School of Health, which was that discrete campus, there was one particular security guy that was very helpful, and he was interested in green stuff. So I got him on board, and he was like my liaison. I got to know the team leader for the cleaners. I engaged the School of Health Studies librarian, so she influenced what went on in the library, told me what we could and couldn't switch off, and reported back stuff to me. We got somebody in the catering. In fact, we got, I think Mark Wrigley, our energy manager, came round with Tariq, and they found all sorts of things in the kitchen that were being left on. And just asking the question, why do you leave that big vent on? So I think if you get a key people, we got a couple of key admin staff, because we had quite big admin offices. So it's about getting key people that are interested, I think, and are prepared to put themselves out a little bit, because it's always on top of your day job, as it were. It was then, to influence things. And I think if you know the people you work with well, that's what I would do, looking at key people. The hard thing has been to get students involved, because they're so transient and they don't have that ownership of the building. So we got them involved by doing lots of stuff for charity. And then we also talk to our students now, all new grads all across the university get a talk on ecoversity and education for sustainable development.
Ken?
Beer o'clock. They all want their beer.
Thanks very much on behalf of the AUE for that. It's really interesting. I think we could all learn a few things from that, couldn't we? I certainly could, with our institution. So thank you very much. If we could all show our appreciation, please. As I said earlier, the people in the other lecture will be coming in here as soon as that's finished. So if you want to sort of stay behind, if you're interested in finding out who's won the iPad from the raffle, if you could please stay. Otherwise, obviously feel free to go. But if you could